Hello, this is John Rankin, johnrankin.us, yes to honest politics, and here, honesty in race relations. It is difficult to even speak of race relations on this one fundamental reality. We are all members of the same human race. So why do we talk about different races among human beings? The only reason such language comes to the fore is due to a history of various bigotries. And those of us who say no to bigotry in any form are rooted, ultimately, in a common humanity. We're all made in the very image of God, and we are descendants of Adam and Eve. And even for those who may not believe in the historicity of the Bible's account, we know genetically we are one human race. Therefore, to even accede to the idea of different races is itself false. There are deeper, more serious evils between people of the same human race that need to be addressed. Therefore, I am radical, root level. I always go back to the image of God and move from that point on forward. Now, a blessing to me, and clearly one I didn't choose in terms of my ancestry, is all the abolitionist Presbyterian ministers that are part of my lineage. The most famous and well-known is Reverend John Thomas Rankin, known as manager of the Underground Railroad. I speak of him in a different video. But that name brought to me a blessing I could not have predicted. Namely, in 2008, in June, I was watching the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright address the NAACP on a thoughtful theological presentation. He was in the middle of the controversy as Barack Obama's former pastor and various things he had said that kind of spiked some controversy. But as I listened to him, I found him to be thoughtful. And so I emailed him the next day. I had said to my wife, I could have a conversation with this man. Within 20 minutes of my email, his daughter at the church where he just retired from emailed me back and said, yes, he would be interested in addressing a public forum with me. Our topic that was chosen was the Bible, race, and American history. What are the issues? So in the middle of the political controversy, I wasn't interested in the controversy. I was interested in the deeper humanity involved. That is the only honest way to deal with controversy. Go for the common humanity, listen well, and put all ideas on the table. And when we do this, truth and beauty will rise to the top in any honest process. So I made this invitation. Dr. Wright accepted it. And what was interesting, and what I didn't know at the time, was that Dr. Wright was a graduate of Howard University outside Washington, in Washington, D.C. Now, Howard University was founded after the Civil War as the first university for Black Americans, and, as it turns out, by one of my ancestral cousins, the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Rankin. And his brother's estate was donated, Andrew Rankin was donated to build the Rankin Chapel, and Dr. Wright graduated in the Rankin Chapel at Howard University. So my name had abolitionist credos to begin with, even though, again, it's a blessing that has approached me. I simply do my best to receive it because of its biblical beauty in honoring all people equally in the sight of God. And so, yes, this is the communication ethos we need. Listen well, a level playing field, honor the image of God in all people equally, no matter what their background is, no matter their differences. So, for example, Dr. Wright was a black liberation, or is a black liberation theologian, as a cousin to liberation theology in Latin America. In both contexts, serious evil is being challenged, of elitists ruling over everybody else. And it needs redress. And in both contexts, the gospel is appealed to. But for me, the poison pill is when Marxist economics were appealed to as the answer. And Marxism is no friend of the gospel. It only reinforces injustice at a lousier level to begin with. But that's not the point. In my estimation, the point is anyone who is yearning and striving for freedom, dear God, I pray, how can I be of assistance? How can I join them in that regard? And you can only do that if you're honest about what you believe and don't believe, what you agree on and don't agree on, and therefore see where the image of God can be most radically affirmed, as Black liberation theology and Latin American liberation theology are based on the biblical affirmation of the image of God. The question is how to best interpret it in the face of concrete evil. Now, in talking about honest relations, race relations, quote unquote, we cannot do so unless we define the history of the Democratic Party. I'm neither a Democratic Party member nor a Republican Party member. The Democrats have been always pro-slavery and Republicans after Abraham Lincoln have pulled out and basically not involved in the issue with only a few exceptions. Now, but look at the history of the Democratic Party and see where we are today. Founded in 1829, Andrew Jackson becomes president, and he is racist as he drives out the Cherokee Indians from their rightful land in Tennessee, the Trail of Tears, out to Oklahoma, all for the sake of his own view of white supremacy. This is the foundation of the Democratic Party. The foundation of the Republican Party is Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation. It's just that that heritage has not been honored for very long, at least not aggressively. 1858, the Dred Scott decision that denied, U.S. Supreme Court decision, denied personhood to a free black man. The Democratic Party was in favor of that denial of personhood. In the 1861 Emancipation Proclamation itself, the Democratic Party opposed Abraham Lincoln, declaring that the black people in the North were to be free, because that was the only nation he governed at the moment, aiming to reestablish the whole Union. After the Civil War, we have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, and they end slavery, they give personhood to all people, including black Americans, and they give the right to vote likewise. The Democratic Party opposed all three amendments. In 1877, with the failure of Reconstruction, you have the coming of the KKK, Jim Crow laws, and followed by about 90 years of institutionalized segregation, all meant to protect the white people against the freedom of an entrepreneurial black class that was growing immediately after the Civil War. In 1964, with the Civil Rights Act, supposedly to remedy this, it took Republican votes because there were too many Southern Democrats who refused to acknowledge civil rights for black people as their equals. And then in 1965, AFDC, a 1930s Social Security program, was extended in such a way to black Americans that it made it more profitable for a woman to have a child outside of marriage and get more money from the government than to be in marriage itself, on average. Now, in 1940, Thomas Sowell writes about that time that the illegitimacy rate, children born out of wedlock, was higher among whites than blacks. Now that to me is historically amazing, given 4 centuries of chattel slavery and the forcible breakup of so many marriages. Yet, the middle class was growing among black America, but then Democratic Party policies come in, 1965, destroy the black family. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a Democrat himself who really cared about black America, was furious 3 years later when he saw the destruction of the marriage rate in black America. And so they went from a lower illegitimacy rate among white Americans to the highest in any category in U.S. history right now. 74% of all black children are born outside the covenant of marriage, functionally without a father at home. And that is the greatest signal of poor education, poor health, and poor economic opportunity. And this is the fruit of the Democratic Party, which then continues to hold them as chattel slavery, psychologically and otherwise, within the welfare state, giving them enough money from Big Brother or Big Daddy government so that they can pay their bills and keep alive, but not be free, entrepreneurial, risk-taking, and dignified human beings in wanting to work for their lives and build their families as black people want to do, as every person on the planet wants to do. The Democratic Party has truly been the party of slavery in this regard. And so we come to a point now in American politics where racial tensions are flaring up. But is it racial tensions, or are there deeper political elements that want to use this racial history to exploit it to their own ends? I believe it is the latter. But the point is that anyone who is honestly a disciple of Moses or a disciple of Jesus should roll up his or her sleeves in order to say, what is the structural evil in politics that has to change so the black Americans are set free to be equals to the rest of us, and indeed, all people to be equals of all other people. This is the gospel. Thank you so much. This is John Rankin, johnrankin.us, and God bless.